Hey, fearless warriors. Welcome to Surviving Shock. I wanted to talk a little bit about self-love because we're so close to Valentine's Day and it's commercialized about couples and about, all these relationship things, but we never hear about self-love as often as we should. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it because self-love is the fuel that allows us to reach our full potential, and it's filled with compassion, grace, and gentleness. And it's learning to be kind to ourselves, even when we struggle. Us fearless warriors who have experienced shock are always worried about other people before ourselves, even if we have not experienced shock, and we're just, not just, a high achieving woman that is, the CEO of their household is always worried about, children, their husbands, partners, maybe parents. We go beyond, and we prioritize everybody else's needs before we ourselves. And so self love gives us permission to find and believe in our own strengths and gifts. Sometimes it means putting ourselves first, which is really very hard to do at times. There's so many times that I've heard my clients say, I can't put myself first. That's being selfish. Or I don't have time to put myself first. So we tend to extend our grace to our children and, like I said, our parents, anybody else outside of our circle, and we ignore us. And so I want to talk a little bit about the importance of self-love and when we ignore self-love, what it can do. So when we sacrifice our own needs and desires for everyone else, it eventually we become resentful and frustrated. I know that that's something that I struggled with when I was younger. I was always running and being everybody else's go-to, that when I ignored myself, I started to feel very frustrated and overwhelmed. Burnout was definitely, ended up being my best friend. And that's not the way to live life. And so when I taught myself, how to love myself, and then when I've taught my clients, we start to feel better mentally and physically. So lack of self-love shows up in so many different ways, like engaging in destructive eating habits, or, maybe even alcohol binging. If we shame our bodies, when we are, drinking or eating, due to that lack of self-love, we're being emotionally disconnected with others, or it can be disguised as perfectionism. Self-love, the lack of self-love shows up as sometimes perfectionism. Hustling to prove ourselves to others and ourselves that we are worthy becomes an endless, empty pursuit that mistakenly feels like self love. But it is not. Self love is what shines through us even when we don't accomplish our goals or we don't meet the standard that we set for ourselves. So, some things that can kind of get in the way of self love is this internalizing negative beliefs on ourselves, that negative self talk, that diminishes our self worth. Comparing ourselves to others, especially through the lens of social media. Unrealistic standards set by comparing ourselves to appearances or achievements that others are showing on social media will decrease our self love. Previous traumas or previous storms that we've experienced, that can impact our self esteem and self love. Again, striving for perfection, expecting this flawless performance in every aspect of our life can set unrealistic standards. And being in toxic relationships. I haven't talked much about that on this channel, but being in toxic relationships, you know, perpetuates that feeling of unworthiness and negative interactions with ourself. It makes it challenging to cultivate self-love. Fear of rejection or judgment from others can inhibit our self-love. Difficulty in showing kindness can ultimately decrease our self-love and self-esteem. Relying on external validation and approval from others for self-worth can be a barrier to our own self-love. Neglecting self-care. I've talked about self-care in previous trainings, and, you know, finding joy in our day is self-love, and self-care. So there are a lot of things that we can do in self-care, in under that self-care topic, that is for ourselves. And so when we talk about this, now we need to know, like, what are the benefits? Why should I care about loving myself? As long as I'm giving myself to others and I'm doing well, why should I care? But imagine, imagine for just a minute what your life would look like if you truly loved yourself, if you gave yourself that compassion. You know, you let go of self-doubt, self-criticism, and the fear of not being good enough. Imagine a life where you feel energized and ready to take on whatever life hands you. Each day presents itself as a new opportunity to reset and reawaken self-love. And if we struggle on a specific day, allowing ourselves, recognizing, giving ourselves grace that we are human and we make mistakes and it's okay. Supporting ourselves with kindness and support will help you feel that self-love. And so there are some things that we can do to improve our self-love. And, like I said earlier, my clients thought self-love was, selfish and they didn't have time. I don't want you to think of it that way. I want you to think about it as ways to give yourself compassion. And we also don't need to think like, oh, if I go get a manicure, that's self-love. That feels good in that moment, but it doesn't extend over the time. And so that's what I'm going to talk about is what can we do almost on a daily basis that gives us that compassion, you know. So learning to recognize our vulnerabilities, and that our feelings of not being good enough, along with disappointment, sadness, and fears. So just recognizing our feelings, being honest with ourselves. Honesty allows for us to thoughtfully speak our minds and express our feelings and opinions. Putting ourselves first. I know this is easier said than done. I mean, believe me, I know. In many years before, I never put myself first. But now that I have, and I've set clear boundaries for my emotional and physical self, it allows me time for myself to do the things that I enjoy. And that in itself has made me a better mom. It has made me I'm a better employee. And, it just, so that self-love can go a long way. So again, taking time for ourselves, and that might be involved in looking at time management, you know, setting time for ourselves. I write it down in my calendar all the time on things that I'm going to do. I always start my to-do list with, my meditation. That's the first thing on my to-do list, everything. That's me. That's for me. So that's my self-love, So time management is a huge piece. Cultivating self-compassion, being kind to ourselves, being mindful of our own, mental and physical pain and taking care of that in that moment. Talking to ourselves like we're going to talk to our best friend, engaging in activities that promote relaxation, and advocating for your own well being. So, if this is resonating with you and you want to learn more about these tips, then, like and subscribe below so that you can get all of the warnings and, notifications that I'm doing more trainings about this. And, I have this in the post, but I am doing a free masterclass on February 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and the registration will be in the link. You can register that for that, and it is on overcoming overthinking and regulating our nervous system. And any participant that attends that will be receiving a free toolkit that goes along with that. So, register for that, and that is part of self-love, is attending a workshop to learn how to help regulate your nervous system. So until next time, love yourself, take care of you, and I'll see you later.